On my 65th birthday, my daughter-in-law tried to punish me for refusing to move my celebration around her luxury vacation. She needs a lesson in humility, Blair told my son, like I wasn't the woman letting them live rent-free in my house. And my son Leo? He stared at the floor and said nothing. That was the moment I realized something painful. The problem wasn't that they were living under my roof. The problem was that they'd started believing it was theirs. I only wanted one thing for my birthday that year. Peace. A quiet afternoon in my garden outside Seattle. A slice of black forest cake. Maybe dinner with my hiking club at the little Italian restaurant downtown. Instead, Leo and Blair cornered me during Sunday brunch with matching smiles that already told me they expected obedience. We booked a wellness retreat in Napa, Blair announced. It falls on your birthday weekend, so we figured you could move your party. Not ask. Move it. Like my own birthday was an inconvenience to their vacation schedule. I stirred my coffee slowly. That sounds lovely. Napa is beautiful in May. Blair blinked. She'd expected immediate surrender. Leo cleared his throat. It just won't feel right if we miss it, Mom. I looked around my kitchen. The same kitchen my late husband and I sacrificed 30 years to pay for. Every cabinet in that house had a story behind it. Every room had cost us something. No, I said calmly. My birthday is May 20th. The reservations are already made. Blair laughed sharply. Honestly, Martha, it's just a date. You're being selfish. Selfish. From the woman living upstairs without paying rent, utilities, groceries, or internet. Then came the line that changed everything. If you won't compromise, Blair snapped, then we're not coming. Maybe you need a lesson in humility. Leo said nothing. Not one word. That silence told me more than any argument could. After they went upstairs, I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time. Not crying. Not angry. Just clear. For 3 years they'd lived in my upstairs suite temporarily, while supposedly saving for a house. I covered almost everything because I loved my son and wanted to help. Somewhere along the way, kindness became expectation. And expectation became entitlement. So I pulled out the lease agreement we'd signed years earlier and finally read it like a businesswoman instead of a mother. The next morning, I canceled every automatic payment connected to their lifestyle. Utilities, internet, shared household expenses. Gone. At breakfast, Blair barely looked up from her phone. I ended the household transfers yesterday, I said casually. Her head snapped up. What does that mean? It means, I said evenly, that starting next month, the upstairs apartment becomes a formal rental unit. Market rent. Separate utilities. Blair looked horrified. You can't do that. We're family. Exactly, I replied. And adults in a family should pay their own bills. Leo turned pale. I could practically hear him calculating how many luxury vacations disappeared once real life entered the equation. Blair stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. If you're going to act like this, she hissed, we're officially boycotting your birthday. I poured myself more tea. The funny thing was, once they stopped talking to me, the house actually became peaceful. The week before my birthday, Blair made a dramatic show of avoiding me completely. She hid upstairs with Leo like I was some cruel dictator instead of the woman funding half their lives. I didn't chase them. I hired a landscaper instead. Leo had promised for 8 months to trim the hedges and fix the backyard. The landscaper handled everything in one afternoon. I left half the bill on the kitchen counter with Leo's name on it. On the morning of my birthday, I heard suitcases rolling downstairs. Leo knocked softly on my bedroom door. Happy birthday, Mom. We're leaving for Napa. He looked miserable. From the hallway, Blair shouted, have fun at your sad little party. Then the front door slammed. I stood there for a second in the silence and smiled, because for the first time in years the day actually belonged to me. Around noon, a delivery truck arrived carrying an enormous designer sectional sofa Blair had ordered weeks earlier using access to one of my secondary accounts. Unfortunately for her, I'd already removed that access. The delivery driver checked his tablet. Payment declined. I gave him my sweetest smile. Then I'm afraid you'll have to take it back. The truck pulled away with Blair's precious couch before she ever sat on it. And honestly, that felt better than birthday presents. At 3 o'clock, my garden filled with people who actually wanted to be there. friends from my hiking club, my cousin from Chicago, my neighbor Helen. We drank wine under the apple tree and laughed until sunset. No tension, no criticism, no Blair hijacking every conversation to make herself the center of attention. At one point Helen raised her glass and said, "Martha, you look 10 years younger." She was right, because I finally stopped carrying people who were perfectly capable of walking on their own. Halfway through dinner my phone started buzzing. Where is my couch? Why was the payment declined? I showed Helen the messages and we both burst out laughing. I never replied. 3 days later they came back from Napa. Blair stormed through the front door like an angry hurricane. "Where's my furniture?" I sat calmly in my reading chair by the window. "The payment failed," I said. "And since I'm no longer financing your lifestyle, I declined the delivery." Her face turned crimson. "That couch was a limited edition piece." "A couch you bought with my money," I corrected. Leo stood there holding suitcases, staring at the floor again. I slid an envelope across the coffee table. "New lease agreement. Sign by Friday or find another place to live." Blair exploded. "You can't evict family." "I can revoke free housing," I replied calmly. "Especially when the people living here treat me like staff." She stormed upstairs screaming. Leo stayed behind. For the first time in years I saw something different in his eyes. Not guilt. Respect. The next few weeks became a quiet war. Blair tried punishing me with silence and attitude, but it stopped working once I no longer needed her approval. I separated the spaces in the house properly. New locks. Separate laundry access. Clear boundaries. One afternoon she watched me changing the basement lock and sneered, "You'll regret this when you're old and alone." I looked at her steadily. "Blair, I've spent 3 years taking care of you. What exactly have you done for me?" She had no answer. That night, Leo came downstairs while Blair was showering. "Mom, does the rent really have to be this high? We were planning a Tuscany trip this summer." I stared at my 32-year-old son. "Then don't go to Tuscany." He blinked. As shocking as this may sound, Leo, most adults don't take luxury vacations when they can't afford rent. By Friday the lease was signed, and for the first time in years my house felt balanced. Then came the garden incident. My local garden club had planned their summer buffet at my house for months. The date was written clearly on the kitchen calendar. Apparently Blair had decided the same afternoon was perfect for an Instagram lifestyle photo shoot. When club members arrived carrying folding tables, Blair came storming outside in silk pajamas. "What is this?" "My photographer is coming." I pointed at the calendar. "This event has been scheduled for 2 months." "I'm a tenant," she snapped. "I have rights." I calmly opened the lease. Paragraph 4. Yard access requires owner approval. She turned to Leo dramatically. "Tell your mother to stop this." Leo looked exhausted. Truly exhausted. Like years of avoiding conflict were finally crushing him. He looked at me, then at Blair, and finally said the words she never expected. "She's right." Blair froze. Leo shook his head slowly. "We've been acting like entitled guests." The silence after that was enormous. For the first time, Blair realized she no longer controlled the room. After that day, something shifted in her. The arrogance faded first, then the constant superiority. Without my house funding her lifestyle, the illusion started cracking. She spent more time upstairs, quieter now, staring at bills instead of Instagram. Meanwhile, I started painting again. I turned the downstairs storage room into an art studio and felt more alive than I had in years. Then one afternoon, Blair knocked softly on the studio door. Not barged. Knocked. She looked smaller somehow, less polished, more human. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded. She sat there for almost a full minute before speaking. I was wrong. Not dramatic. Not manipulative. Just tired. She admitted they were drowning in debt. The Napa trip had nearly wiped them out completely. The designer life she projected online was mostly financed by credit cards and my generosity. "I thought if everything looked perfect," she whispered, "then I'd feel safe." I set my paintbrush down. Control isn't safety, Blair. Independence is. She looked around the studio. "You really don't need anyone, do you?" I smiled gently. "I love my son very much. But I don't need to be used in order to feel loved. For the first time, she actually listened. Not long after that, they started apartment hunting seriously. I even gave them a positive rental reference. But I kept charging rent until the day they moved out. Because some lessons only matter when people actually live them. The moving truck arrived on a rainy Saturday morning. A much smaller truck than the one they came with. They'd sold most of the luxury nonsense online to afford a security deposit. Leo carried boxes downstairs while I made sandwiches for the movers. During a break, he hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "I thought avoiding conflict kept the peace. But really, I was just letting you carry everything." I kissed his cheek. It's never too late to grow up. Blair came down last holding a small clipping from my rose bush in a tiny pot. "Can I take this?" "Of course," I said. "Just remember, roses need sunlight and very clear boundaries." She laughed softly because she understood exactly what I meant. When the truck finally pulled away, I stood alone in the driveway. And for the first time in years, alone didn't feel empty. It felt free. 6 months later, the upstairs apartment is gone completely. It's now my art studio and gallery space. My hiking club meets in my garden every month. The house is warm again, peaceful again. Leo and Blair live in a modest apartment downtown. And strangely enough, now that they support themselves, we actually feel like family. They come for dinner every other Sunday. Blair works part-time at a boutique now. She barely posts online anymore. Last week she baked me a cake herself. It was terrible, dry as sawdust. But it was the first thing she'd ever given me that didn't come with strings attached. And that meant more than perfection ever could. When I think back to my 65th birthday, I don't remember the boycott or the insults anymore. I remember the moment I finally understood something important. Love is not permission. Kindness is not surrender. And sometimes the most loving thing you can say to someone is a complete sentence they never expected to hear. No, those 2 empty chairs at my birthday table didn't ruin my life. They gave me my house back. And for the first time in a very long time, I was finally home.